You are listening to the Final Say Radio Show, a Rappaport Media production, with your host Brett Rappaport and co-host John Rappaport.
Jim Robbins is joining us, and of course he's with us, so we're going to bring him into the conversation. Jim, I know any day now the book's coming, right?
Oh, yeah, any day now. I think they're shipping them next week, so, or sooner. Who knows? One of these days.
Well, I have my order in, and they haven't called me yet to come pick it up. So hopefully it'll be any day, because I've been watching your post, and this is something that you've worked on for. I know you've done a lot of work on him for many years, but you have put a lot of effort into this, and for, I don't know, the better part of a year or two at least, on Facebook, I've seen all the different pictures and some of the things you've been researching that you post and just comments that you make. And I appreciate the effort, and I really am looking forward to it.
Oh, thanks. Well, I hope that I've given a good account of George Custer and who he was and what he did, and try to cut through some of the myth-making on him, both from the hero-worshipping side, but particularly from the people who are completely against Custer, because I think particularly these days it's been that characterization of him that's been dominant, and it's sort of this cartoonish character like in Little Big Man or something like that, or some genocidal, bloodthirsty maniac, and he was neither of those things, but a guy with good and bad points, and hopefully that'll come through.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I know it, and I'm sure you could relate to this. I grew up with the Johnny West 12-inch action figures, and I had the Custer and and Johnny West, and what was her name, Jane West and Geronimo, and you had all these things, and I just remember it was nonstop westerns when we grew up, and you watched all the stories, and actually I thought Hollywood did a great job of telling the stories and showing some of the issues of the time without turning it into just like a one-sided, like you said, let's ignore what really happened and try to turn it into like some social I guess experiment or redefining history, if you will.
Oh yeah, that's really taken over in the past decades. I mean, since the 60s, when that kind of social criticism first it started to insinuate itself into film, which I think is fine, a little of it, or if it's done artfully, or it's not bludgeoning you over the head. But particularly since the 1980s and during the Reagan era, it just sort of took over, and everything became a moral lesson, or how evil America is, or something like that. Not just with Custer; he was just one victim of this. I mean, the whole culture really has been overcome by that, and I really think it's time. I think we were seeing a shift more towards an objective view or a more balanced view, and even, dare I say, sometimes in small ways, an even pro-American view. I know that's not really fashionable to say, but, you actually see that sometimes.
Yeah, it's a good point. Jim, there are so many stories that we could address today, and one that I really don't want to get into is it amazes me with all that's going on in the world. You had that shooting in Oregon, and some of the networks focused on it for so long. It bothers me. I don't want to say all that much on it. I just want to mention this, that when you have these shootings and you give it so much face time, I think that other people watch this and it encourages them to get their 15 minutes of fame, if you will. There are a lot of sick people, and I don't think that the network should cover it, and I think they should actually give more coverage to things that are actually more significant, which they often just kind of blow over and breeze by.
Well, it fits the agenda, the anti-gun agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, they're going to give it a lot of attention. They won't talk about other aspects of violence that don't fit their agenda, inner city crime and stuff, even if it involves a gun, which is fascinating to me, like shootings that take place in America's big cities on a daily basis. And they could make that part of their anti-gun agenda too, except it doesn't fit the storyline. It's got the wrong diversity profile, and usually takes place in an area where there's already really strong gun control. So it kind of goes against the narrative. Whereas something like this thing in Oregon, even though I'm sure there are pretty strong gun control laws there, it goes in favor of their narrative because it is so senseless and so tragic.
Yeah, that's true. It's funny that you mentioned that because I was literally typing out a post on Facebook, and I've been trying to kind of censor myself because I put too much on there sometimes, and I've been trying to just kind of stick with, referring to stories and things and doing my talking on the show. But the first thought that I had was, Chicago, of all places, is if not the number one place for gang violence and shootings, among the top. And you have so many cities, and it's not just a couple, it's probably 50, 60, 70 major cities around this country that see such gang violence and day in and day out shootings and attacks and murders. And it's almost like it gets completely ignored except for like a little blurb that may be in the local paper. Yet, I just don't understand how we can completely ignore that, almost like we ignore the country's drug problem and some of the other significant problems, where you see so many more people die in these particular circumstances than from legally owned guns or other situations. It's kind of like people who die, they're so quick to want to ban guns, but how many people die each year in traffic and motor vehicle accidents? Yet, when's the last time somebody called for outlawing, outside of maybe Al Gore, outlawing cars?
Well, yeah, they do call for outlawing cars because cars are polluting and terrible. It's funny because here in Northern Virginia, in Virginia 8 Congressional District, we have James Moran retiring after holding the seat for many decades and, not doing very well, in my opinion, but okay. So now in the Democratic primary, they're, vying for the seat because this area went 70-30 for Obama in the last election. And whoever wins the primary essentially wins a congressional seat for life. And the front runner is a guy named Don Beyer, who's, I think, he's former assistant governor of Virginia. He was also an ambassador. He's held various posts. He's a pretty well-known Democrat, and he's the front runner. But he made his fortune around here by being a car dealer. And now he says his number one issue is climate change. It's just so funny how he's trying to run away from the fact that he made his fortune selling these, polluting things, right? I mean, in their world, right? And so now he has to appeal to these hard left Democratic primary voters. And so he's just hyping this thing about, we need to change the way that we live. We need to change what we do and stuff. It's like, dude, you are a car salesman. Whatever else you've done, you're a car salesman, man. Come on.
I just hope he wasn't a used car salesman. Although it would make it perfect.
All these politicians are when you get right down to it. No offense to a used car salesman, but the stereotype.
Yeah, not to put down used car salesmen and comparing them to members of Congress.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to insult them by comparing them to politicians.
Jim, I know we usually talk so much about foreign policy and whatnot, but I don't know if you've had a chance to check out some of the blurbs or some of the coverage of Hillary's new book, which is just laughable to me, how, she's trying to set up her opportunity to, I guess, redefine history and try to pretend like she never had opinions when she was a senator or as Secretary of State or when she herself was in the White House with her husband or all the other things that she's been involved with for I don't know, 30, 40 years, as if none of that happened, and what she's saying in her book is the gospel, but nothing else. Don't look at anything else, just what she says in her book, right?
Oh, yeah, this completely sanitized nothing book that's getting terrible reviews in which she takes a stand on nothing, and it makes a case for nothing. So this is why she should be elected, because she never had an opinion, and, because she has this great talent for whitewashing everything and rewriting history. But what I do like about the Hillary Clinton story is it's a really American story, because here you have this couple struggling, living in public housing and in debt, and then they leave the White House, and overnight almost they're worth $100 million. I mean, that is the American dream.
Yeah, how could you bash that, huh?
Exactly. I mean, from taxpayer subsidized housing to wealth, almost overnight. I mean, and they had to struggle. Like she said, they struggle to pay for their mansions, plural, right? To put together the mortgages to pay for their mansions, plural.
I feel so badly for them.
But they managed. I mean, look these crazy kids from Arkansas. Look how well they're doing now.
Wait, how much did they pay for the daughter's wedding?
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it's a testament to the great things that can happen in America when you sell access to yourself.
Right. Now, I was trying to watch Wolf Blitzer and some people like that today just for, ha-has. And I never heard them bring up anything like that, because that's the first thing that would really pop into my mind. Like, gee, you're pleading poverty like you could relate to the average American because of your life experiences, as if, that's really the fact. But I don't really know that many Americans, especially those who were really spent most of their life in politics, who could put, I don't know, what they spent $3, $4, $5 million on the daughter's wedding.
Well, I guess when you get $200,000 just for showing up someplace, then you can afford to do that. I mean, It's really interesting. I would like to ask Hillary Clinton the question: do you really think that you're worth $200,000? Like, that's the value of her showing up and talking for an hour. Do the people there attending whatever she's doing get $200,000 worth of value from her? I mean, if it's anything like her book, they're getting zero value from her. I mean, she's not saying anything. And now they're locking down the press, so no one can cover any of her events. No one can ask her any questions. I mean, it's like she just shows up, collects wealth, and leaves like she's some kind of royalty. And, of course, she firmly believes this and firmly believes that it is her right and, the duty of us to pay her all this stuff, not to mention anoint her as our queen. So, but just a little perspective on this would be nice, and I think that she adds that perspective for everybody when she says things like, oh, we were in debt and we were struggling. And then when she tries to back off that with her statement today that, oh, but she understands the struggles of the little people, or whatever it was that she said, oh, those of us who are not her and we're out here struggling and just trying to, make it. But she's going to come and be our philosopher queen, make everything good, apparently.
Yeah, that is interesting. So do you think with her treatment of the media, do you think there's any chance that some of them will be critical of her in her book, and particularly critical of her when she runs for president?
Well, people have been criticizing her book. I mean, no one has found anything good in it yet. I mean, at best it's bland, I mean, she doesn't take a stand on anything. She doesn't say anything. It's just kind of a worthless book. And, the press doesn't really like her. Well, MSNBC side, although I don't know if they qualify as press. And the Clintons certainly don't like reporters. So I fully understand why she would have a total blackout and press lockdown on every single thing that she does. Have people just have attendees being frisked going into any of her events, that no one could have a camera on her, no one could have a video of her, all these other things. I can understand that from her point of view because, she might actually say something she believes in, and they certainly don't want that on video.
Yeah, that's a good point. Jim, one quick comment before I move on to the next little topic, but I would qualify this statement. I do actually think that perhaps Hillary and Bill maybe grew up less fortunate than Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, because I think that in that particular case they seem to have had the golden walkway paved for them, just like the our childhood stories from birth to the White House, in my opinion. And I don't necessarily think that was the case with the Clintons. I think just when it's interesting. I saw him at Syracuse when he was among the 6 Democrats running for president in the primary, and he wasn't the front runner at that point. And he spoke at Syracuse, and I said, boy, this guy could really shine you. And I was not surprised when he took the lead and actually won the Democratic primary. But, he certainly kind of came from nowhere.
Well, yeah, 2008 is really instructive for everybody, but particularly for Hillary, because, you may recall that back then, if we go back even earlier to 2007, she was the presumptive nominee. She was undefeatable. She was the presumptive president. People were basically shining up the crown for her. And then, bam, out of nowhere comes Barack Obama, knocks her off the rails, and wins the nomination, wins the election. So the main thing they have to do now, this is the Clinton camp, it has nothing to do with the Republicans. It has everything to do with the Democrats. They have to guarantee that there will be no challenge to Hillary's supremacy. So over the next 2 years, they're going to make sure that no viable candidate emerges from the Democratic Party, particularly a minority, particularly a woman, someone of Hispanic heritage, someone like that, who could usurp her identity politics crown. No way. They're not going to let anyone like that. Okay, Joe Biden, no problem. Not a threat. A white guy, sort of this, beloved, battling, crazy uncle type. Okay, he's not going to seriously challenge her for the nomination, so let him run. Shafta has shown up some kind of challenger, so it's not like a coronation like they want. But her main objective right now is to make sure that Elizabeth Warren or someone like this comes out of nowhere and just knocks her down. Because if she had to make it on her own ability in a fight like that, she couldn't do it. She couldn't do it in 2008, and she can't do it now when she's, even older and more wounded and just having a tougher time of things. So, we will see. But right now, I think her whole aim in life is making sure that no viable Democrat gets anywhere near thinking about the nomination. And how they're doing that behind the scenes, I would really love to know that story. That's what journalists should be focused on.
That's a great point, Jim. I would pay for, by the way, to see a runoff, watch the whole primary between, say, Biden, Kerry, Warren, Clinton, and throw in Rahm Emanuel. I think there would be books to be written about that one. It would certainly be entertaining.
Yeah, get Rahm in there. Boy, I'd love to see that. Talk about a take no prisoners dude. That would really be something to see. Elizabeth Warren is interesting because she would usurp Hillary's, sort of gender inevitability, like the next president has to be a woman. I don't know where that came from, but it seems to be out there. Well, we do know where it came from. It came from Hillary. So, yeah, let a female challenger try to take that on. That would really be funny. But, wow, watching Rahm go at it, wow, it would just be scorched earth. That would be fun.
Hey, I'd argue we've already had a couple female presidents, but, that's a common...
Well, you're right. Bill Clinton claimed to be the first black president, so I guess Barack Obama can be the... Okay, I see where you're going.
Exactly. So, Jim, there's one last thing to touch on today, and I thought it was interesting, and it's important to mention. The comments from the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, with regards Barack Obama's just complete ignorance of Congress in making this decision to release Bo Bergdahl in exchange for, get the release of Bo Bergdahl in exchange for the release of the 5 Taliban leaders who are now going to go back to Afghanistan and give rise to the Taliban to take over Afghanistan again. And I thought that John Boehner went out of his way to make it clear that there would be harm and there would be consequences from the president's actions that would negatively impact, and that it almost said there would be blood on his hands. And that's what I've been saying for a week. But I think it's telling when the Speaker of the House says it, because he doesn't make a lot of statements like that, Jim.
Yeah, that's really important, and I think that the American people understand that there's a problem with what the president did. He should have been consulting with Congress just out of courtesy, much less the fact that it's the law, and that he broke the law in running around Congress to do this. I think that if the president continues to try to empty out Gitmo by these means, through these really bad deals, or just letting guys go, just saying to heck with it and letting him go, there are going to be serious repercussions. And the political price that he's paid is manifest. If you look at the opinion polls recently of Barack Obama's approval, well, he's dropped several points, right, about 5 points, depending on which one you look at. I mean, some are in the 30s now, others the low 40s, and on the way down. So maybe the White House even understands how serious a thing this is. Now they're trying to shift all the blame to Hagel, saying that the Secretary of Defense had the final say, which, okay, so the president, doesn't he have the final say? I mean, he's the president. The buck stops there, but not according to him. In any case, if they try to do it again, I think what Mr. Banner was saying was basically a signal to the president that if you try to do this again, it's really going to get serious.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. I just wonder what this president has to do before a member of Congress, I mean, like someone important like John Boehner or Mitch McConnell, or somebody is going to just come out and say, I think it's time to have impeachment discussions. Because it still amazes me to this day that we had to witness what happened with Richard Nixon, who, maybe had a couple incidents, and you probably have that each and every week with the Obama administration, and yet it's just not going. It doesn't seem to happen. They're going to just let him go on. And by the way, I'm waiting for a Mitch McConnell statement or something significant coming from his mouth, because I think he's just I don't know what he's doing.
Yeah, Nixon did some bad things, but were they really any worse than the things that Obama's been doing? It's really kind of a toss-up when you think about it, particularly in terms of abuse of power. And the IRS scandal, shifting names to the Justice Department, the latest revelations there, that they sent all these names to justice. Clearly that was far and away worse than any abuse of the IRS Nixon did. So, it just goes on. Yet Barack Obama kind of skates over it. Maybe if his public approval does dump down into the lower 30s or even upper 20s, something like that, then we might see something. But for now, he's not at, Bill Clinton levels of approval, certainly not. But, he's getting kind of down there, so we'll have to wait and see.
Well, maybe we could offer an ambassadorship in Afghanistan after his term in office.
Maybe Michelle would like to go there. That'd be a good place.
Oh, God, just as long as she never runs for president.
She'll be a senator from North Carolina, right? And then she'll just follow the Hillary track. It's like this is a new thing. First ladies get to be senators and then get to run for president after their husbands. And so this way it just keeps our dynasties intact. I mean, what a decrepit country we're becoming.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I heard a rumor that they may be moving to New York. And God, I don't want them anywhere near where I am. Please, no. Go back to Illinois, please.
Asheville, North Carolina. That's Asheville, North Carolina. That's what we'll go. That's the way.
Asheville's a nice place. That's like in the middle of nowhere. That'd be interesting. Anyway, Jim, it's always a pleasure. And of course, Jim has his book, The Real Custer, coming out, so you can go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and you can order that, or you can just wait a few days and go buy in hand. But certainly, I encourage you to go pick up a copy. Jim, it's always a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, we'll talk to you next week. James S. Robbins, the one and only, great author